back! It's you! This is Faulty Circuits, and you are just in time to hear the story of our sisters and the very little cloth. Calvin was unaware that he'd been deprived of oxygen for as long as he had. True enough, people who are deprived of oxygen often find themselves unaware of these details. Nonetheless, he'd been without a fresh breath of air for so long, he had no living consciousness in his body. Outside his body, Calvin stood in a place so dark it seemed to extend into infinity. Nothing around him in any direction. Nothing shining but a silver lining. Following his consecutive experience inside large fauna, he was becoming accustomed to finding himself in unexpected, mysterious places. A single light shone from somewhere above. If not for that blinding spot, Calvin would have thought he'd simply been swallowed again by yet another large animal. Well, too early to tell, he thought. "Hello?" Calvin called out to the emptiness. Nothing. His voice stopped dead without the slightest echo. He tried again. "Hello?" He sat down on the nothing, sad. "Calvin!" came a resonant voice. Calvin shot up. "Whoa! Who said that? Where are you?" he called out, terrified. "It's me, Calvin. It's God," rang the nothing. Or the light, it was hard to tell. "It's time to come home." "Wow! God! Oh my, you! I wasn't expecting to meet you today. I have so many questions." "We have forever, my son. Now join me. Come." "God, why do bees hate me?" "Come, Calvin." "Is the secret right? Should I have willed myself harder not to get hepatitis? If I thought more healthy thoughts, would it go away? What about miracle spring water? Can Sylvia Brown see and hear living people now that she's with you?" "I don't know where Sylvia Brown is, Calvin, and I wouldn't tell you if I did. Come now." "Do witches feel nice in heaven? Will I learn to find ecstasy in all the things I endured in life?" "Calvin!" The voice was becoming irritable. Calvin, about to run off a fresh batch of questions, caught himself and stopped. "Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm listening now." "Okay," the resonant voice breathed in and out. "Calvin, look into the light." Calvin looked up. "Ow, my retinas!" He fell back down onto the nothing and rubbed his eyes. "Lol," the voice laughed. "I meant step into the light. Step into the light, Calvin." Calvin stood up again. He reached up, but the light was too high above. He stretched and stretched. Not enough. Calvin jumped as high as he could. Still not enough. "Lol, can't reach. Jump higher, Calvin," the resonance taunted. Calvin jumped and jumped. He jumped until he was exhausted. "Almost high enough, Cal. Keep trying." The voice was laughing, but obviously trying to stifle it. It waited until Calvin was so exhausted that he curled himself up on the ground. "Lol, super psych, Calvin. I'm just trolling. You're not dead yet." Calvin didn't move from the floor. "God? Can I still ask you questions, God?" "Oh, this is becoming tiresome. Go on now, Calvin. Go away. Go back to your body. Just go." Suddenly, Calvin's retinas were burning again. It was so bright. Someone was standing above him. Another silhouette. Not again! But it wasn't a bear. Woo! "He's alive, sisters! Gather round!" More figures approached, all feminine, all women of the cloth. The very little cloth. They appeared to be wearing a lingerie version of a normal habit, complete with a flog strapped to each one of their leather girdles. Calvin mumbled, struggling to get up. He pulled his hand up to his head. "Easy, young man," came one of the sexy nun voices. "You've been resuscitated from a coma. We found you in a pile of bear droppings." That word shot Calvin full of adrenaline. His awareness returned suddenly. He felt for his arms, legs, fingers. "I'm whole! I wasn't digested!" he exclaimed. "It looks like you irritated that bear too much, so she passed you right through," she responded. peering at him now that he was awake. There was something familiar about him. No, she'd never seen him before. Calvin sat up and hugged his legs. He suddenly remembered the incident inside the bear. He was responsible for the death of Jennifer Love Hewitt in there. Or rather, his hideous lyrical artistry was responsible for her death. On the bright side, he thought, as the only poet inside that animal, he could take credit as the poet laureate in Ursa. His eyes darted around the room. Gosh, did I ever wake up in the right place for forgiveness? He looked up through the stained glass window of the cathedral around him. Light filtered in through a sexy lady with legs that went on forever. Oh, you will certainly do penance for your sins here, said one of the nuns coyly, brushing her hand against her flog. But first, tell us, how did you get here? How did you end up in a polar bear in the first place? Calvin cleared his throat. He explained everything in as much detail as he could remember. How he'd fallen asleep on the beach, woken up with only his phone inside a sea lion, exhausted his contact list trying to broker a rescue, then was torn free and been re-swallowed by a bear. He continued how he'd woken up next to Jennifer, how she'd made a pass but he wasn't ready for new love, that he'd recited poetry from his forthcoming album, that her brainstem pulled its own plug to avoid hearing more. Then he shut his eyes and began to recite the poetry. Within seconds, there was blood dripping from the ears of the closest nuns. Hands shot up to try to block the sound of Calvin's foul noise. The air was electric with shrieks of pain. The nuns began to collapse one by one, writhing and frothing at the mouth. When Calvin opened his eyes again, the grim sight before him was too much to withstand. He fell from his bedded platform onto his hands and knees on the ground. "No!" he cried out. "Why does this keep happening to me?" The end. Find out what happens to Calvin next time, after a few other chapters.